Hello all. Thanks for joining us here at the LC. I'm Marjah, and I'd like to talk about what we do here. Friends, I am a little bit in I'm feeling, I don't want to say weird, but I'm not as comfortable as I should be right now. Maybe my lumbar pillow isn't in the position I needed to be in. But actually what happened was that the batteries on my mic died, so now I have to completely start again. But that's okay. Nothing has changed here, and the focus of this podcast will remain. And I want to talk about a philosophical yet practical topic of discussion, and that's what I'd like to do right here at the LC. And the philosophy in this case is viewed from more of a humanistic or spiritual lens. And I really want to discuss what's happening behind the scenes. There are things that we see every day in the media. This can be on TV, cable news, local news, and then we look at our phones and our gadgets and devices, and all kinds of media pops up on our screen, and we get all kinds of messages. But what we are talking about here is, what do all of these messages mean? And I'm really going to hone in on morality, spirituality, and all of those things in between, because that's something that I think is worth it. It has merit. And so this is the fundamental question here. And the fundamental question is why? And that's the philosophical question, and that's where it all begins. It is the question that sets the stage and allows the mind to wander and explore so as to discover. And that's what we used to do when we were very young children, all of us, when we were of elementary school age. I would say around the age of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We always wanted to know why. We constantly asked questions, and we were inquisitive because we wanted to understand how the world works. Well, that's what this is all about. Understanding how the world works. And it's all because we're seeking to discover them. And what is it that we're really seeking to discover? Well, that is knowledge. You see, I always say that knowledge is something that can't be found in a book. Now, don't get me wrong. You cannot know something and read about it. But that's secondhand knowledge. That's a secondhand account. And you might also be saying, well, what's wrong with reading about something? There's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot that I have read about. But I want you to also know that you can also come to discover knowledge that has not yet been discovered in your own mind. The same way that these people who write books have certain kind of knowledge, you can also have knowledge that has yet to be discovered, that you can come to know within your own mind, if you know how to discover it. Because what people don't understand is that knowledge is a living entity. It is discoverable. That's what it means. To have knowledge is to not know. That's actually the definition of it. You have to not know in order to know. And this is something that no teacher in a conventional classroom will tell you, because they don't know anything about this. And that's fine. I just told you. In order to have knowledge, you can't know. It's about inquisition. So if one is not inquiring, if one doesn't have questions, if you don't want to know, you won't know. And so with this understanding and everything that I just said, that gives a whole different perspective and definition to what it means to actually teach. And when you really think about it, traditional teachers aren't actually teaching because they don't have knowledge. And I know what I said was loaded, and it's really loaded because it's coming from a person that has been in the educational field for so many years and different capacities. But I had to say it because it's the truth. That's who I am. And what I do on this podcast is teach, and I teach you how to think for yourself. how to extrapolate truth from falsehood. And I do this by stimulating the part of the mind that is sleeping, and that is in somewhat of a hypnotic state. So this is what we're talking about. We're talking about subjects that I believe induce critical thought, which is what I believe is essential for the discovery of knowledge. And all of this brings us to the topic at hand, and that is something that I've been talking about for a while. And I am going to continue to talk about, and that is the evolution of mankind. Friends, we are now here. We are at the crossroads. We are at the tipping point. We are at the turning point. We are at the apex. And we must make a decision in our heart about whether we would like to move forward or be left behind. What am I talking about? Well, to be frank, this is about human evolution. This is a time of psychological, physiological, social, technological, and spiritual advancement. This is why anxiety, fear, and mental fragility are at an all-time high. And I've talked about mental fragility on my YouTube channel. Check it out. There are so many people suffering with anxiety, and they themselves can't even tell you why. Most don't know why. Well, I can tell you why. It's because of the uncertainty of life. They don't know what's going to happen. They don't know what might happen. It's this fear of life. And the fear of life is also the fear of death. And we all have that fear. There is in these people that suffer with this anxiety, a lack of peace that comes from not having a spiritual foundation in their life. Friends, I'm a strong believer in having a spiritual foundation. For me, that really means learning to live by your heart. And the only way to do this is by putting yourself first. That's the true meaning of self-care. You see, when people fail to take care of themselves, it's because they ignore what the heart wants. And the heart speaks. It speaks in whispers. And when you don't listen to the whispers, it gets louder and louder. It actually cries out. And unfortunately, so many people ignore the crying out of their own heart. Instead, what they do is what other people want, or what the status quo wants, which is society. But in most cases, this is due to the fact that there is no real self. There's no self. There's no establishment or firm anchoring in some kind of definitive self. Because when that is the case, you always put that self first. The person that has a body and can speak has no identity independent of his family or his country, his culture, or race. And this means that he really hasn't discovered his own individuality, which I won't even go too far into it, but many collectivist cultures have a problem with. They think individuality is a form of selfishness. But no, it's actually self-discovery. Because if a person cannot discover who they are independent of the group, the tribe, the family, the collective, the society, they will not be able to give of themselves. You see, the most important thing is that we discover who we are for the purpose of giving back. We all have to give. But if we don't have a self, if we don't discover that self, we have nothing to give. And who are we giving to but the collective? and the collective is against the individual. You can't be against the individual because it is the individual that advances the collective. If you want to advance, you owe it to the individual, because it's up to the individual to self-discover. He needs to know who he is in order to advance himself. for the sake of the collective. When people do not know who they are, independent of the family, the tribe, the society, the culture, the religion, they don't know what's good for them because they're out of touch with who they are. You see, these people are out of touch and they're easily susceptible to brainwashing and hypnosis because they are not anchored in themselves. Anyone can infiltrate their mind and tell them anything, even if it's a lie. They'll believe lies because they can't discern truth from falsehood. These are people who can be convinced that the night is really the day and the day is really the night. And even so, I mean, this is evident if you just look. This is by observation. What I mean is that it doesn't matter what they see. Perception doesn't work that way. Perception is mental, and what one sees with his eyes is not necessarily what he perceives within. And I suppose the next question could be, how does one determine truth from falsehood? How does one know what information he can trust and what he cannot trust? And this would seem to be a question that is simple to answer, but it's not. Because in truth, people believe what they want to believe and they see what they want to see. You see, what I can tell you is this, and it's comforting to know this. Nature doesn't care about what man desires to see or not see, because nature presents the truth at all times, and man chooses whether to accept or reject it. And the rejection of truth is falsehood, in that it erects a false reality to take place of the truth, and it paints a picture of lies so as to provide a sense of credibility, because the fact is, falsehood hasn't a leg to stand on. It has no credibility or real evidence to support its claims. And that's why it must be rooted in lies. You see, the one major lie that man tells himself is that he's a good person. I'm telling you, most people believe that in their heart, they're full of love and that they're clean and that they don't harbor any kind of hatred or malice or whatever. And this is just plain arrogant, because all of us have in us something that we desire, and it is that desire that cultivates the inner evils that we wish to do away with. We don't want anything to do with that, so we suppress those desires and those evils, and instead we do what we believe are good works in the world. We become a member of the Peace Corps. If that even exists, I don't know. We adopt an African child. We donate to charity. Volunteer. We do that too with a nonprofit. We clean up the environment by recycling and composting. And to take it a bit further, we will even accept what we know is unacceptable. We will advocate for the rights of those who have broken both state and moral laws. All of this because we so desperately want to be in the right. But I ask you this. In the right with who? I know it's not God, because most people don't know God. So why would they care about what God wants? What people want is to look good and be a part of a club that accepts those who abide by their morals and so-called values. People want to belong and be accepted. That's why they accept any and everything. For you see, to them, that's what it means to do the right thing. And so here we have it, friends, the moral standards of today. This is what the moralists believe. This is what they stand on. They believe that what is right is to accept any and everything. The words are inclusion and belonging. You see, leaving people out and behind, according to the moralist, is inhumane. Therefore, if we consider ourselves morally upright people, we ought to do the right thing by accepting everyone, regardless of who they are and what they believe. all cultures are equal. It doesn't matter where you come from in the world. It doesn't matter how evolved you are. It doesn't matter what religion you practice. All cultures have value and have merit and should be treated equally. You see, we don't need to vet people. We don't need to assess their character or their values and morals. Because everyone is created equal under the eyes of God. You know what my grandmother used to say? People are on different levels. That's what she used to say. Ponder on that. You see, it's very important for us to understand the culture war that we're in right now. And this war extends from Europe to America and even Canada. You need to understand this, because if you don't understand this, you won't know the arguments. You won't know what people are talking about. You won't know the questions that people are asking. And people are saying, I don't understand why anyone would want to take the side of someone who broke the laws of our land. I've heard many people, those on podcasts and mainstream media, question what state the world is in. They've asked, and this is what I'm saying, why are there men who defend the acts of criminals? Why do they call for their freedom and due process? And why is there no concern for victims of their crimes? They want to know what the hell is going on. And I'm explaining the mindset and the mentality of these disturbed people. And I have to say it. They are disturbed because they don't understand providence. They don't understand natural law. This is a mental illness. And it's a mental illness because there is a loss of touch with reality. You see, what these people desire is to be morally upright. That's all they care about. They are a self-righteous people who are arrogant and live to be honored by one another. That's why they like to make anyone in any group who challenges them the epitome of evil. If you or I were to go up against what they say is right, they would turn it around on you and me and deem us evil. So this isn't necessarily about politics or winning votes, as some might think. This is deeper, because this is about people who are not really so political, even though they might be in the political eye, or they might even be politicians. But it doesn't really matter, because this is a way of thinking. And we must understand that man is really a spiritual being that embodies moral law. His entire life depends on law and justice. If man had no law, he couldn't prosper. And that is the current state of affairs. Man is in limbo. We're in limbo right now, friends. Man desires to sit on the throne of righteousness. That's who he is. He wants to be like God. And because of this, he traded his humility for sheer arrogance. And I always say that arrogance is a fool. And foolishness comes from immaturity and the rejection of correction. It is the outright refusal to be taught. So what am I saying? These self-righteous moralists, the ones who advocate for inclusion of illegal immigrants, inclusion of lawbreakers, inclusion of the immigrant in the West, or wants to come to the Western world, and that immigrant won't assimilate. As a matter of fact, they don't even talk about assimilation. They tell these people, speak your language, keep your culture, because the Western culture is evil. Yes, they say that. Inclusion of any person, this is what it is about, who does not align with cultural norms and values. And maybe that's a sentence fragment. But what I'm saying is that the failure of inclusion of any person who does not align with cultural norms and values, particularly of the Western world, that's what we're talking about, is a recipe for the destruction of that culture. And this isn't new. It's been said by many people, but let me tell you this. This is what they want. They want to destroy anything that is good. And what do I mean? What do I mean? What do I mean by good? I mean the prosperous and the fruitful. They are, in fact, jealous of those who are good, and they want to destroy everything that the good have made. Friends, they are succeeding in that endeavor. They are, as I speak, destroying Western civilization in Europe. They are adversarial forces doing the work of Satan, who's really the shadow, Shaitan, of the light, whom we call God. And the light, God allows it. He allows all of this. Why? Because this is really a force of nature at work for good. All works for good, even though in appearances it seems to do an evil work. And that is because good always prevails, friends. The whole of nature, universality is good. Man himself is inherently good, which is thought to be the adversary or opposing force, which, like I said, is really working for good. So in this case, we're dealing with people who have decided that Western culture is racist, misogynistic, homophobic, transphobic, and Islamophobic, and therefore ought to be completely erased. Furthermore, we didn't get into this. The haves, or the affluent, are enslaving the have-nots, the working people. And capitalism is also the devil. Friends, they want to tear it all down. They want to destroy it. And what better way to do that than letting people into the country that have no real love for it? No stake in it. They didn't build it. They didn't contribute to it. So what do they care? Let's put out this radical propaganda and get these foreigners on board. This is indeed a righteous work. We're doing something good. Friends, this is destroying civilization. But why? You have to understand why. And I've been talking about it the entire podcast. I told you this is not new. There have always been adversarial forces that work to inhibit progress and destroy. That is a facet of nature that will forever remain with us. And for this reason, we're not going to go to war with it. We're going to accept it. And that's what turn the cheek really means. That's what turn the other cheek means. People thought that it meant to just allow somebody to beat you up. No, you didn't get it because you didn't look deep enough. You weren't philosophical enough. You didn't want to think analytically or critically. As sure as I'm speaking to you right now, these adversarial forces are at work for evolution and devolution. But they will not, I repeat, they will not overcome divine justice. They are part of the divine justice. And that is because they must submit to providence one way or another. Friends, there are people seated in the United States Congress who are calling for death to the United States. It's incredible, but it's the truth. These folks believe that the interpretation of the laws and the governance that enforces and legislates these laws are inhumane. But again, you need to understand why. You must understand that they do not believe in laws. If you didn't hear anything I said at the beginning or the middle, hear this. The reason for all of this is because these people do not believe in laws. Because laws exclude people. They hinder people from doing what they want to do and living where they want and exercising, quote unquote, their rights. Laws, they believe, are a barrier to human existence. But you see, this is a half-truth because they do support laws. Friends, they support the laws that enslave people and keep people from having the power to turn those laws on them. So they create laws to stop you, a law-abiding person, from overpowering them. You see, for them, laws are in place to allow them to continue or prevail, I guess, in their lawlessness. Laws for them are more like protections. And this is the main reason why the law-abiding have no protection in today's society. You see, the ultimate goal is to have a society that allows for hedonism and really anything that goes. This is a society, where all desires can be lived in the open. Therefore, whatever one wants to do, he can do it. If he has some kind of deviant sexual desire, he can pursue it. If he desires to off an innocent man such as Brian Williams, the former CEO of United Healthcare, who was brutally murdered by Luigi Mangione, then so be it. If one decides to engage in public lewdness, such as in that park in Oregon, and I won't say the name here, he can do it. If one desires to loot and destroy public property at will, he can do it. The so-called laws of these people will protect him from any kind of accountability. All of these things can be done, friends, without impunity. We can, however, keep calm and be free of worry because according to universal law, goodness always prevails. There is no man who has ever or will ever knock God off the throne of righteousness. That just won't happen because God is the ultimate judge, because he's not a man and he can see straight through all of us because he knows our heart. He knows our motives. And so for those of us who live life rooted in some kind of spirituality, we have hope because we know that there's a higher power, and that power is the authority and the governance that works for real and true justice. Friends, I just published an essay on this, and I'm discussing these adversarial forces and the furthering of evolution, and I think it's worth reading. You can find it on Medium. And with that said, thanks for joining us here at the LC. I look forward to your return, and I also want to hear from you. I need your input. Please feel free to leave a comment on some of our handles. You can find us on X, YouTube, Rumble, Substack, and Medium. I look forward to hearing from you. The time is now.